Welcome back to the Clemson Pawcast. Tennessee made a statement on Saturday that nobody, and I mean nobody, beats them 16 straight years in a row. Welcome back to the Clemson Pawcast. I'm your host, Jarrett, for the first time tonight because Tully is busy somewhere in agony watching the Guardians lose to the Yankees. Joining me tonight is Cody, and we're here to recap your Clemson Tigers beating FSU 34-28 in Tallahassee. So, Cody, we went down to Tallahassee, started down 7-0 to start the game, and then came back, beating the Noles 34-14 in the fourth quarter before allowing some garbage fourth quarter scores that Dabo was pretty upset about. Finished the game 34-28. So, knee-jerk reaction. You can just share yours. I'll share mine, and let's dive into it.
Let's do it. Well, first, really good job on the intro. I think you're setting the bar really high for Tully and Ben when they host next. So good job. And that also says you're brand new to the podcast, you're hosting. That just shows how bad of a host I must be that you're stepping in. But no, you're great. You're natural. So good job there.
Thank you.
Knee-jerk reaction. So I would say the score doesn't indicate obviously how good Clemson played. There's some problems, and we'll talk about them. I think most of them on the defense. But I got to say, I think the last two games, now this Florida State game was not a complete game, but the last two games have been a little bit reassuring that things are going the right direction. It seems like, there's certain position groups that are like one step forward, two steps back. But collectively, in aggregate, I feel like the team is moving forward, and it's starting to look more like a playoff team. So positive vibes is what I'm coming with after the FSU game.
I like that. I like the positive vibes. Starting down 7-0 and, being a little nervous, I think once this game got moving, I think they call it the middle eight. Maybe Bud Elliott likes to say that. The middle eight, that's probably a Belichick thing too. We really dominated that. And I feel like we've done the middle eight really well for the last couple of games, like you said. But I think the story for this game to me is either side of the ball kind of starting out a little slow, then looking really locked in like a complete team for that middle chunk, and then kind of fading off on the the back half or that fourth quarter at times. And that can be frustrating as fans where you want this team to be locked in and crushing it each moment of the game. But I think it's hard to deny that Dabo has the chemistry down to how to make his team peak in the season at the right time. So I think we're just dealing with some of those growing pains. What do you think?
Yeah, if you look at the numbers from the game, it does look like it's pretty comparable. If you're just looking at the score, you think, wow, that's a close game. But you're right. I think I don't know how. The middle eight is important. I know that's a recurring theme, and it has been for several seasons. Clemson looked great. The defense made the plays there both at the end of the half and to open the second half. I don't know if I don't know if that's coaching. I don't know what that is, but I got to say that the defense did really hunker down there for a small spell. And then you're right. It kind of fizzled there towards the end. And I don't know, maybe we can talk about that later, but
yeah. So sounds like we're kind of saw the same game. So that's a good place to start. Let's just do what we normally do. And we're just going to jump into the offense. So one of the most interesting stats out of this was the wide receivers were only targeted 6 times. And out of those targets, only caught 3 of those balls. So I've been kind of scratching my head as far as, do we feel that that's more of like we're designing to lean more on the runs and to pass the ball around to like running backs and tight ends and not so much receivers for this game? Or is that something FSU showed us? And I want to say that part of it is like building some chemistry more on the O-line for run blocking and run blocking situations, and also just trying to get more players in space, seeing that wide receivers haven't been consistent catching the ball. And, so just letting them do more blocking and trying to spread the ball around. So, yeah, what do you think of that weird stat? That's weird to see only 6 wide receiver targets
it's
for wide
funny.
receiver U.
It's funny. I just rewatched the game and I'm like, that's not true in my head, but I start thinking about it. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
you're right. Most of the passes did go to Will Shipley or Maffa on the outside or to the tight ends. So
Mm-hmm.
for one, it's like that's hard. You're right. That's hard to believe that wide receiver which we're not any longer,
No.
it's getting 6 pass attempts and 3 receptions. And by the way, the guy that caught the lion's share of those is a really good wide receiver, which is Antonio Williams. And I guess we can talk about him more in depth later. But I'd say the big takeaway there is that we touched on this, I think, a little bit last week or maybe the week before. The flexibility and the way Brandon Streeter is opening things up, and the way I always thought about it with Tony Elliott was we're trying to run the same system. We're trying to, interchangeable parts. We do Clemson football, regardless of the
Mm-hmm.
personnel. And I thought, and Brent Venables was the complete opposite. He's like, I'm going to craft my game plan, and we're going to lean on the strengths of the defense. And think of like Isaiah Simmons and how he became a Swiss
Mm-hmm.
Army knife for the defense in 2019. I felt like
Yeah.
the offense never did that, but it looks like Brandon Streeter is really adapting and saying, okay, our running backs are really good. We feel like we can really exploit some things in the flats. Our tight ends are really good. We have,
Mm-hmm.
it helps with wide receiver blocking or edge blocking when Brandon Still's on the outside. So using all these things to our advantage based off the personnel rather than, trying to make, what is it, round peg, square hole type deal. Like
Yeah.
I think we're just utilizing our strengths, and I give a lot of credit to Brandon Streeter for that, but also some of the play calling and some of the uniqueness and creativity he's brought forth this year.
That's a really good point. And I think, if you imagine from Streeter's perspective, you're kind of the second in line guy for several years. And as an offensive mind, you're watching every season Brent Venables change out his scheme based on who he has. I mean, even when, he made Christian Wilkins play DN for like most of that one year in like 2015 or whatever that was, so just that open and willingness to like play to whatever your strengths are. And I think that Streeter saw that for all those years and decided like, hey, like I think this is a better, more efficient use of everybody's skills rather than just trying to put everything in a box and just cookie cut the offense every year depending on what the ingredients are. Now that might be a hot take. I can't read Brandon Streeter's mind or know how that all worked out. But so if he is doing more creative things with the offense, then I'm actually excited to see that because we start to see other guys start to emerge, like you mentioned, Antonio Williams, where, like I said, for a couple of weeks now, he really feels like the key that unlocks a lot of the versatility of that offense. I mean, just look at the pass he caught for a touchdown. He comes around and breaks against the sideline. And then when they had the flea flicker, it's DJ hands off to Maffa. Maffa flicks it to Williams, who's coming back across, and then Williams tosses it to DJ. Now, could another receiver have done that? Probably, but I don't know that's a coincidence that he's constantly in on these explosive plays. What have you seen from him?
I think he's one of the quieter storylines from the year, just how good he is. Like, take his stats away because I think you're going to see more and more stats. He's going to start padding. I think
Mm-hmm.
he's becoming like, I mean, just like you said, take this game. He was like our only wide receiver option. I think, and Ngata had the other catch, I believe. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think he's incredible, and I think we should talk about him more. I think we're going to have more stats, to kind of back his performance. But just what I've seen from him and his ability, the way he can get out of like his route running. He can break right, left. He understands leverage. He can make plays in the open field.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the last Clemson player that's had that like kind of that like versatility and an ability. I mean, of course, Hunter Renfrow was great at like route running and catching the ball, and like Sammy Watkins was super explosive. But what he brings to the table is completely unique. And maybe I'm blanking on someone of the past. Of course, there's the T Higgins and Mike Williams of the world, but like he's a different skill set. So
Mm-hmm.
very man, like overdue, but also much needed for DJ. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think his progression I think is elevating the offense. We're seeing it in real time, and I'm really interested to see what this guy can be in year 2 or 3.
Yeah, that's here's an early hot take for you. Is Antonio Williams slowly becoming kind of the Isaiah Simmons of the offense? It's an unfair comparison, but I guess what I mean is that when Antonio Williams is on the field, do you feel more comfortable that we now have a lot of different options at our disposal that we're not going to get with Spectre, with Bo, and with Ngata? Like, no disrespect, like those are great receivers, but it feels like Williams is going to. There's a lot more options that he's going to unlock for us, whereas the other guys, they're pretty much just going to run their position, their routes, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think like Isaiah Simmons was like the eraser because he covered so much ground. He made other people like it made their jobs that much easier. But for Antonio Williams, I think it's
Mm-hmm.
just I think he does that for DJ essentially. Like he's
Yeah.
when they get more chemistry, and it appears that's happening now. He's been a first nger for 3 weeks now. I think I
Mm-hmm.
I think he's the guy that's going to elevate DJ even more, especially when things break down. Invariably they will. So it gives DJ
Mm-hmm.
a target of a guy that's really has just a really good skill set, just really good, in regular route running. But when things break down, seems to have that kind of football instinct to get open as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. There's the other guy, Adam Randall, of course, and I looked it up. And Adam Randall and EJ Williams both had about 30 snaps apiece. But what's interesting too is that, like, I don't know if EJ had any targets, but I don't think Randall had any targets. So, it's like these receivers have been all on the field, like getting reps, getting reps, getting reps. And you just have to believe that in the next few games, because we don't play any more road conference games because, Notre Dame's in a conference game. They're too busy, sucking up all their independent money, which is fine. Secure the bag, whatever. But yeah, I just want to believe that these receivers are getting ready to pop because they're getting a bunch of snaps. And if not, honestly, then I feel pretty decent with what we have at the tight end and the running backs, and then with the younger receivers, if that means like, overthrowing some of the senior guys.
I think so. It's in just a matter of time before EJ and well, for one, I think unlike other years, they have to prove it a little bit on the outside with blocking because I think there's been a
Mm-hmm.
decline. T. Higgins and young Justin Ross they were really motivated to block, and it really helped. It helped ETN a lot. I've seen
Mm-hmm.
there's been a little bit of a drop off in that in recent seasons, and making sure that they're committed and they're willing to block. It's like, hey, there's not a ton of options at the
Mm-hmm.
9 and the 5 spots. There's Collins and Ngata, EJ Williams and Randall, and then obviously Dakari Collins left. So like they're gonna have their opportunities. Like you mentioned earlier, I don't know what was happening in terms of scheme, if that was just what was open in terms of getting it
Mm-hmm.
in the flats and those shorter routes, and that was just the game plan that was in response to their defensive strategy, or if that's just part of the strategy going forward because these are the better parts of the unit. I don't know, but they're going to have their opportunities.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I know that, like you said, there's not a ton of options. Like, maybe two, maybe three deep at some of the positions with some younger people. A group that I want to see get more reps, and I'm just super glad that they're healthy, is the offensive line. I mean, I think that Mitchell Mays came in for a little bit, for like maybe 13 snaps. But, I get that they're wanting to build chemistry, but I just get nervous as we get deeper into the season when we're just constantly putting lots of reps on McFadden and on Parks and like all of these guys in the same unit. So where we are now, obviously Syracuse is going to be really tough, but do you foresee that in the back half against maybe like Louisville and Miami? And I mean, Notre Dame's only 3-3. So, do we start to see a little more rotation up front, or are we just not comfortable enough to move any other offensive linemen to get anything other than like purely garbage time snaps?
Yeah, I mean it's difficult with the offensive line, right? Because you do and you saw Mitchell Mays out there and spelling Blake Miller. But it's
Mm-hmm.
rare that you see that because I guess you're potentially putting your quarterback at risk. And so you see games often where the offensive line starters are getting all the snaps. It would be good to work some of the younger guys in. Collins, Sadler, again, Mitchell Mays would be a candidate. Blanking on the 5-star from last year at tackle, just because I haven't heard much of him this year.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there's some guys that would be good to work in. But I think the best way to go about it is hopefully we get a blowout. I think the thing about this season is
Mm-hmm.
we've had a little bit better schedule than we anticipated, so we haven't had
Yeah.
there hasn't been a lot of like second halves where we're up 40 to 7, and then you have these opportunities to bring in Cade Klubnik and some second team offensive linemen. But yeah, I think you're right. I think that those guys do need reps because we've had injury luck, knock on wood, but that's not
Mhm.
always it's not always how it goes.
Yeah, this season has definitely had people like I think I looked it up, and I think that this Saturday against Syracuse will be the third top 25 team we've played and the third unranked team that we have a chance to give their first loss to. So, I don't think any of us looked at the schedule this year and were trembling necessarily, but I've been impressed with some of these teams, with Wake Forest, with Syracuse, that are just going out there and finding ways to win. And I think you're probably right that because these teams are not necessarily, um, you know, just floating by and letting us beat them up, it makes it so that we're not able to get some of those substitutions in. And yeah, I guess there's really not much we can do about that until we start really, hanging the points on the board.
Yeah. If I told you going into the year that Notre Dame would be our, and this might not be true, but it would be the fourth best team on our schedule, you'd be like, no way, right? But I think that might be the case.
Yeah,
Maybe the
yeah,
fifth best.
I could see an argument for either one of those. That's going to be a really interesting game too, because DJ has his moment to come up there and get some revenge. I think Dabo is always going to take the opportunity to poke Notre Dame in the eye just because of his background of being a walk-on guy and a scrappy person versus the, you know, culture program that's, basically gilded and the media darling. So what's something that you would, not to skip Syracuse, but while we're thinking about it, like, what do you want to see up there when we go to South Bend for that fourth or fifth toughest game of the year?
On the football field, like a
Uh,
result.
yeah, sure. Unless you're talking about going to see Touchdown Jesus.
Well, yeah, there's some sites there that I want to see. No, like I think it's all about redemption for DJ. And not even
Hmm.
look, the 2020 game, but not a
Hmm.
big deal that we lost it. DJ played out of his mind, but just
Hmm.
they're a good defense. That's the one thing they have going for them. So I think to go out to keep the offensive progression and keep moving, that could be like if we play well on offense, that could be a statement game
Yeah,
of sorts, doing it in South Bend. And even though they're not ranked, I think that says like kind of creates a pecking order. It's like, hey, what did you call the media darling?
yeah,
The evil empire. Like,
yeah.
you're not Clemson.
No, and I
Yeah.
mean, the kids are just playing with passion right now. I mean, I don't think that I've seen a guy more passionate. And I probably don't even need to finish the sentence before you can probably think like who's the most passionate person on this team. You know, number one, Will Shipley. I mean, every
Yeah.
time that guy runs through a hole, he basically like cuts a flip, stands up, and starts like screaming red face. It's like only because he's mad he didn't get 20 more yards on that run.
Can I?
Yeah, go ahead. I was just gonna say, who in recent memory would you compare his like level of excitement? I mean, maybe Christian Wilkins.
Yeah, Christian Wilkins comes to mind. I'm trying to think because he's a fierce competitor.
Hmm.
A lot of his energy comes out of like a competitive fire, which is you love to see that as a fan. Uh, yeah, I mean Christian Wilkins comes to mind. I'm trying to think of
Hmm.
someone else. I mean Ben Boulware maybe, but I was just
Yeah,
gonna
that's true.
I was just gonna say about like a little nitpick here. What's becoming frustrating is
Hmm.
the offensive line's inability to block through the interior. And you see if when Will Shipley, when he looks, it's just fun to watch him when he gets and look like he doesn't have that breakaway, that fifth gear, but he's got that
Hmm.
like intermediate speed where he can get up the field really quick and hit and
Yeah,
shoot through a gap and make a linebacker miss. And it's really fun to watch. But he's just not getting those holes. It's very rare. Credit to
yeah,
Streeter and the offensive brain trust for getting him some throws on the outside, but you're just not seeing those holes to the interior. And they keep going to them, and that's been a gripe of the fan base. They are using that to set up some play action in the RPO game. So I understand that you have to concede that a little bit, those 1 or 2 yard runs, but I'd rather those 1 or 2 yard runs be 3 or 4 yard runs at a minimum. So yeah.
He does seem like he's getting a little more comfortable running through traffic and kind of bouncing off of people a little bit more. I don't think anyone's going to have the yards after contact that Etienne had, but yes, and just like last year and maybe every year, like I'm trying to remember the last year we had a really great interior run game. I mean, was it even the 18 team or was it, you know,
Yeah,
16 team with Gallman?
I don't think we have had one that's like
It's just never been our thing.
people would point to Taylor Hearn and John Simpson at left guard as, the two
Hmm.
championship team left guards, 18 and 16. But
Hmm.
even those teams, I don't think they were great at interior blocking. I mean, and
Hmm.
I think it's just never been a strength. Maybe we have some guys coming up with Marcus Tate, getting some years
Hmm.
under him, and Colin Sadler next in line. Maybe there's something brewing, but I don't think. And frankly, with this unit this year, I think I'm happy if their pass pro is really good to elite, which it's been really good. So
Hmm.
so you can't have your cake and eat it too unless you're Georgia or Alabama. So I'm happy with keeping DJ clean and healthy and some consistent
Hmm.
run blocking, if not like dominant run blocking.
Yep. Yep. And I think, Quacking Tiger is probably beat the dead horse on offensive line recruiting. And I'm sure he'd be happy to come on and give us his 2 cents because it feels like you said with Sadler and with Miller and like some of these guys that are newer, like we're slowly starting to prioritize offensive line a little bit more. And I think with Thomas Austin being younger, kids want to play for him. And, they don't necessarily want to play for Caldwell as much, not that we have inside info, but it just seems like, older guy has been around, not really thinking or innovating a whole bunch, maybe. So having that fresh blood, I think, is a good shot in the arm for O line recruiting.
I think so. I definitely think so. I think it's already bearing fruit. And yeah, by all accounts, Caldwell was good at development. But I think at the end of the day, like 80% of it's talent acquisition. And I think Thomas Austin, get that young, hungry guy. And I think that could change. There's no reason Clemson shouldn't be like it is always kind of what's the word, befuddling to me that uh that the offensive line wasn't one of the better. Like some position groups, maybe punter, maybe you're not great at that, but
Mm-hmm.
whatever. I feel like offensive line is a place that Clemson should be able to do well in recruiting, and I think you're starting to see the foundation of that. Tristan Lee, by the way, is the offensive tackle that was the 5-star
Mm.
out of Virginia.
Yeah. Yeah, it's wild. I mean, you've got all these O linemen that are like allegedly pretty talented and highly recruited, and it's like, okay, they're not getting playing time. I get that, but this is the era of the transfer portal, and
Yeah,
the last thing we can handle is like Lee and Sadler deciding to leave tomorrow because they're just not seeing the field.
yeah, and it's tough. And Diedrich Pennington is the other that I forgot about because
Mm-hmm.
he came into last year just a huge dude and athletic.
Mm-hmm.
Suffered a knee injury. I think he came in at like 380 in terms of his
Yeah,
weight.
something like that.
He was just too
I wanted
large.
to believe he could be a big, giant, mobile, athletic dump truck, but yeah, I
Yeah,
haven't seen him on the field yet.
yeah. But I think the ingredients are there. I think uh, there's a bright future for the offensive line and more Will Shipley runs to come, and
Mm-hmm.
Maffa for that matter too.
True. Cody, anything on the offense you want to touch before we hop over to the defense?
The big thing for me, Brandon Streeter. We can talk about compare OCs if you want to talk about that at some point. But I'll just say I'm amazed. I see the creativity in his play calling. Again, people get mad. He makes maybe he's going too much to the QB draw, or he's just
Mm-hmm.
going straight to the kind of A B gap run um, to the running back, and it goes for like on second and long, and it goes for no yards. Fans are upset about that. I'm like, I get it. I think he's setting that up for later or he sees something with the defense where he feels like there's an opportunity there. But I got to give him credit for the way he's reworked the personnel, but also a lot of the creativity in the play call and all the third and fourth down opportunities where we had to convert on Saturday night. It seemed like, I don't have the stats in front of me. It seems like Clemson pulled off most of those, and a lot of it was with a unique play that I had never seen before. Guys in motion, misdirection, all that stuff. And again, I just didn't see that at all during the Tony Elliott era. And
Yeah.
I think QT had a joke about, he's not doing so well in Virginia. He's saving it for the end of the year.
Yeah,
Yeah. I think we have
you're
a, I
you're
think we
you're
have an
totally
upgrade.
right.
I'll just say I think we have an
You're
upgrade as our offensive coordinator. I feel confidently saying that.
I agree. I honestly agree. And if you go back a year ago and listen to the podcast, what are the things we were all clamoring for? We wanted motion. We wanted creative play calling. We wanted to attack the middle of the field. We wanted to use the tight ends more. The only thing that we haven't had consistently in the offense is runs up the middle and wide receivers making like contested catches or
Yeah.
most catches. But like
Yeah.
if you look at those, that's a huge. It's almost like he was listening to us and gave us the things that we were asking for. So all of
Right.
those things are great. I mean, I love seeing Stool sliding out from releasing off his block and then coming into the end zone for a touchdown. Like, love it.
Yeah. I think a lot of fans were clamoring for like a more advanced route tree from the wide receivers because it seemed like they were using a lot of basic routes from, that
Mm-hmm.
they really didn't haven't evolved. And I think that has a lot to do with your personnel. I think now with Antonio Williams, maybe they can start to look for a different type of receiver that's a little bit more about route running rather than just
Mm-hmm.
a lot of big nines. When I say nines, I mean, T Higgins and DeAndre Overton's.
Yeah,
Like maybe this like mid-tier guy, this Ohio State type receivers. Maybe that's what we're looking
mm-hmm.
for going forward.
Definitely. Uh, I think that's all I got on the offense. So why don't we jump over and talk about the defense? So if you look at the defense, as I mentioned in the beginning, it definitely felt like at the beginning of the game, I started getting pretty nervous with just how easily they were kind of running the ball either side to side or even straight up the middle. That was the most disheartening is watching, our D line, our boys just missing tackles or, just getting pushed aside. And Dabo said, it's a game in the trenches. It's just one on one a lot of times. So he said, look, there were times that they just wanted it more than we did. We just didn't want it. And that's what happens. You get guys blowing off the ball, you get guys missing tackles. So there were times where I was nervous. There were times where I was excited, feeling like, yeah, we finally figured out, we locked in, everybody's in sync, there's good coverage, good tackling. And then there were times again at the end, where we were kind of back where we started kind of scratching our heads. So a bit of a roller coaster on defense. What do you attribute that to? Or do you think that it's just some guys are rusty? Do you think that we're on the road? It's Tallahassee. It's the Florida humidity. Uh, uh, what comes to mind?
Yeah, it's the humidity. Yeah, first and foremost. No, it's funny. You talk about like all these things happening. All right, so I just waxed poetic about Brandon Streeter and the offensive coordinator. I gotta
Mm,
say, like something that when there was a more dynamic quarterback that we played in years past, Brent
mhm,
Venables, who we have to put this in the proper context, was the best defensive coordinator in the country, if not the best coordinator in the country on either side of the ball.
mhm,
And he would always have something. He's like, here's the guy we're not going to let beat us. And I think we can unequivocally say that was Jordan Travis, right? The
mhm,
quarterback. He seemed to be the guy that beat us. Now the running back Benson was good. He shed a lot of tackles, but I felt like we didn't have the right game plan going in. I didn't feel like, for one, there was a lot of missed blocks. They kept going to
mhm,
screen passes, and to me that's when you can't blow up screen passes. You don't understand the formation. You're not prepared. You don't anticipate it. You have safeties that are slow,
mhm.
safeties that are not mean, linebackers that aren't mean getting off blocks. That's a problem. That's just something that we did not see during the Brent Venables era. That was a thing of coaching, thing of like having an edge. But overall, going back, there were a lot of things that I saw. Not having a spy on Jordan Travis, not game planning for him to show him something different, and it just looked like they made the adjustments throughout the game. We couldn't quite fill the gap. So all that said, there were a lot of positives from the defense too, but it just looked like we were unprepared, and that goes to coaching. And again, putting it to its proper context, we've had the best defensive coordinator in the country for the last 10 years, and now we have a guy that might be a good defensive coordinator, but at this point in his career, he's not Brent Venables. That was kind of my takeaway. Maybe that's too much of a hot take. Maybe that's, I don't know. What do you think about that?
Well, look, this is a hot take podcast now that Tully and Ben are not here, and Ben can't give us some words to calm down and be reasonable. So we're going to be hot takes as much as we want tonight.
Yeah.
I would agree. And speaking of hot takes, I read something from Anna Adams at 247 that says this defense has had flashes of dominance this year, but the sums have not yet equaled the total of its parts. And that really stood out to me where, yeah, it feels like on paper, we have this really talented defense, with a couple of spots that maybe are B minus to C's at time, maybe the corner position, and then, one of the safety positions, depending on who's playing. But even all together, it doesn't feel like we've really tied it together, and put that where it needs to be. And even players are saying they're getting called out for being soft. I mean, just maybe one game of being called soft, like, okay, you're not focused. But it seems like there's been a couple of games where players have been told that they were being soft, where coaches say that we need to have more intensity. So, like you said, not only I think we really underappreciated. You can see it in the sidelines when Venables was calling plays for Clemson. He looked like he was biting through his own teeth, as I like to say. I mean, he just looked extremely intense and focused. And I think Goodwin is a great play caller and probably extremely knowledgeable from what it sounds like. It's just there's a difference in going from like the director to the CEO, to when you've got a team that you're rallying and leading to where like you have to make all the decisions and drive the vision of the team at every level. So I think that's a little bit like you said, it's huge shoes to fill. And I don't envy him in any capacity doing that. So with the way that is, what would you change? Is it more intensity? Is it different play calling, scheming? If you could redo the FSU game.
Well, for one, the FSU game, I think there needed to be a spy on Jordan Travis. I think he needed to see that. No, we did send a lot of pressure, and I credit to the defensive line for getting some pressure with just four in some cases. But I felt like you had to see Venables would do this. He would send 2 bullet blitzes from linebackers. The next play, a cornerback would come in, and you're risking something. Obviously, on the back end, you're risking a big play. But you do it enough because once the quarterback's been hit enough, he's like, I don't, it kind of takes him out of the game mentally. You sack someone on 2nd and 7, and now it's 3rd and 15. They're done. That's how you end a drive. You have to take some big swings. So yeah, I would like to see more intensity, more aggressiveness, and like the intangible part about how Venables, like what it was about him that would just wore off on the defense, or that like they kind of grabbed hold of his kind of fierce mindset that seemed to have tapered away a little bit this year. So I don't know how you how you fix that, how you account for that. I no idea.
Yeah, we all wish that there was an easy fix, and we all have a Brent Venables shaped hole in our heart. So it's not just the defense, it's the fans too. But another thing I thought about too is not only did Venables move on, but you also had some really senior leadership in the team that also moved on, with Skowski, with Spector, with Nolan Turner, with Andrew Booth and Mario Goodrich. So it's not just that the guys behind them aren't maybe necessarily more talented or have the potential to be more talented or more athletic. It's just that, being a leader means you've been in the situations and you know what it takes to play at a certain level to get certain results and how to communicate that. And I think, guys like Trotter, McGuire, and Bentley are all guys that have kind of been on the back burner for a couple of years. And so being in the limelight to drive people to be more focused. And then, you've got a mix of Koval and Makuba, like, younger guys, and Pride is playing a lot, and Davis, and all this stuff. So we may be undervaluing that. Like, it's not just that Goodwin isn't whipping the guys into shape, but it's just some of it is on the players and just that environment with the team of knowing like, hey, we don't have that big voice of Bulware or Skowski saying like, get your shit together.
Yeah, and I don't know to what extent. I always think the leadership of one player, the vocal leader as they call it, is overstated. I think
Mhm.
good players just play good, and like good character, put enough good character people like Christian Wilkins and the Power Rangers together, and combine that with talent, really good talent, like they'll play really well and they'll win you a championship. I look through the roster. You mentioned a lot of guys. There's a lot of guys we lost that you mentioned. You're going to lose seniors like that. It's going to happen. Who's supplanting them? And I think there's enough there. We're talking about like Breesy and Tyler Davis and Miles Murphy. Like they're in their third and fourth years. On the linebackers, they're young-ish, but they're not that young. And especially when you talk about McGuire and Bentley, they're in their fourth or
Mhm.
fifth seasons, and there's enough experience there combined with talent where going back to, I think you cited, is it Anna Adams?
Mhm.
Yeah, like some of the parts type, yeah, some of the parts is greater than the whole. It's not, yeah, that's not the case here.
It-
Yeah,
yeah, it's not equal to the total. Yeah.
yeah. In this case, like I look at this defense and it's a great defense. It stacks up on paper with some of the best Clemson defenses. So like the fact that they're not, it's not even like that they're not great. They're not, sometimes they're not good. Like they don't play to their ability. That is a big red flag because this is a, on paper, this is a great defense. Injuries, youth, stuff like that on the back end. But yeah,
The rust on the team too that is maybe undervalued as well, where you have people that were injured for a couple games, Makuba being out for a little bit, who I still think is undersized for safety. I think he's only like 180, and that's
yeah,
makes me nervous having him hitting people. But Brazil missed the LA Tech game. He missed like two other games, and then that's like weeks of practice that he also missed on top of coming back from an ACL tear, where he's just already trying to get himself back into shape, and then dealing with all the stuff with his family stuff, his sister. So, yeah, I think you're probably right that individual, vocal leader might be a little overvalued. And then if that's the case, then it kind of makes me wonder why, like guys like Murphy. I mean, KJ and Davis and Murphy are older guys. I would say Murphy and or KJ and Davis have probably looked some of the most consistent out of all of them. But we're just missing something. I
yeah.
feel like it's that unifying moment where all of those pieces kind of pull themselves together.
Yeah, because individually you've seen some really standout performances. Like Barrett Carter, I think, has really flashed all year. Jeremiah Trotter's looked very good. Trenton Simpson has had his moments. Tyler Davis has been good. Miles Murphy's really come on. I'm really been impressed by him. So it's not, and
Mm-hmm.
KJ's been, he's been a godsend. So it's not like guys
Mm-hmm.
haven't individually been good. It's just like, yeah, coming together, clicking, like you said, the unifying moment or whatever. Yeah, you still want to see that. And I think it is because of injuries. Makuba has been injured. I think it was his elbow. I feel like when he's coming in and filling a gap and shooting a gap, you're hitting a running back at full speed. I feel like safeties that are injured, you can just see it. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel like that's what you saw from him and both Venables. So I chalk up a bit of them being a step slow and missing some tackles. They've been injured. Sheridan Jones, great getting him back. I think the things that don't happen that you don't see because you didn't see a lot on his side of the field, I think that just shows you something from having his presence there. Wiggins is getting better. I'm just kind of going through the team, but there's a lot of promising stuff there. So all that to say, I think the silver lining from that is there's been injuries. There's been guys that have like XT coming back. There's been guys that have Brazil having a family issue, the death of his sister. I think things are coming together. And ultimately, I think that there's no reason the defense shouldn't be better in 6 weeks than they are now. Yeah, and yeah, again, having some grace for Wes Goodwin, it's his first season. I bet he's going to get better between now and the postseason.
Yeah, good points. We don't want to be all doom and gloom and just make fun of the defense this whole segment, but just wanted to call things out. I mean, these are things that as Clemson fans, especially that watch the games really closely, that we notice, and we have had the highest standard of defensive performance. And coaching in the country, in my opinion, the last really decade, especially the last 6 or 7 years. So just things that we like to talk about. Gotta point out that Murphy had a freaking awesome forced fumble. That was super cool to see. I love seeing a good forced fumble and then recovering it. Um, Other than that, yeah, like it's I go back to what I said in the opening where it's like Dabo just has a formula of like peaking the team. And I think that, you know, we get enough film that they can see their mistakes. And I think they're going to grow from the mistakes. And I think when Syracuse comes to town this week, we're going to be hopefully focused, not as rusty, and ready to go. Give them some. Cool. Well, Cody, I'm going to pop over to the special teams and just touch on that briefly, and we will roll on for the rest of the show. So, special teams, not much to say here. You know, I think two things that stand out to me where I believe we had two 50-plus yard punts from Aiden Swanson, which was insane. I think there was one that we pinned him like right down, like in the 10, and that's just awesome to see. And for so many years, we've had to deal with like the heartburn of not knowing what our punting team is going to do. I think Antonio Williams has taken over for Will Taylor at return, which I approve because Taylor's just been a little shaky catching some of those balls, and it's really not worth taking the risk. I would rather just fair catch every punt than try to make an explosive play with somebody who's going to risk dropping the ball. So the other thing too is that Shipley did have that big kickoff return. So two things that were positive for special teams. Anything else that you saw on special teams?
I mean, obviously BT Potter,
Yeah,
solid as usual.
highest scoring kicker in Clemson history now.
We'll play in the league. We'll make an NFL squad, I'm sure. And we've been questioning all year whether the risk reward, putting Will Shipley as a kick returner and the risking the injury, given the value he provides at running back and needing him there, is it worth it? Is the trade off worth it? And I guess, you did see that good run. You're like, yeah, he is the one guy on the team. Maybe not the one guy, but he can make that happen. So, in a playoff game or, high stakes game, maybe it does make sense to have him there. I wouldn't mind not seeing him there every kickoff though.
Yeah, that's a good point. So we are still looking for our CJ Spiller on kickoff returns.
He doesn't have that top end speed.
We will just
Yeah.
Well, Dabo made the joke the other week where Shipley caught that one ball on like the wheel route and then ran it in almost to the end zone. And Dabo was like, that was an awesome play. But, if that was CJ, he would have got that touchdown. And apparently, peeved him off. So love that. Love that little feistiness.
Yeah.
Awesome. Again, special teams, short and sweet, which is a great thing because if we're talking about special teams for a long time, something horrible has happened. So we'll take that. We'll just move it on. Let's talk about the biggest game of the week outside of ours. So Tennessee, Alabama, number 3 versus number 6 in Knoxville at Neyland Stadium. I think 101,000 people attended there. I've been to that stadium, Cody, once for a spring game, and it's a very it's a different type of stadium feel because it wraps around. Like you feel like you're almost in like a Roman Coliseum, and then behind you have the river that goes by where they have I think it's called Vol Navy that hangs out down there. But let's look at some of these stats from this game. First, this is the first time that Tennessee beat Alabama since 2006. And I think the police are still looking for that missing goalpost somewhere down on the river. So I hope they find it. I think they literally started a GoFundMe for that. First, you saw the game. I'll get the stats in a second. What's your gut reaction? How'd you feel watching that? Did you enjoy watching 1,100 yards of offense in an SEC game?
Well, I was one of the idiots that bet the under. So, I think you mentioned, like you sent us a text that said, "God, I feel imagine how the guys that bet the under feel." I'm like, yeah, I did. But the thing was, you knew you lost by halftime, so it was okay.
Yeah,
I saw Tennessee the week before, and I'm like, they're good. They're not some teams just kind of catch fire early, and you're like, like Kansas, for example. Tennessee's good.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they're back or their program's back, but Hendon Hooker is a good player. The Tennessee faithful, those are some rabid fans. They're just like Georgia. It's just Georgia North. Like they care about football way too much. Even Clemson, like a self-respecting Clemson fan, has some boundaries. Like those people,
Hmm.
it's religion. So like that was a yeah. This I've never been there. The stadium, it looked like just a raucous. It looked incredible. Like I don't mind seeing orange going crazy like that. It's pretty cool. But yeah, I think the team's legit. I love seeing Alabama lose, and yeah, 16 years. One other thing the announcer said, they're going to get fined for that when the players entered or I'm sorry, when the
When the
fans,
fans,
yeah, when they went on the field, and
uh-huh.
the other announcer said, it's okay, they've been saving up for a while.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. The crazy thing too, it's just, one, Alabama has looked up and down this year and extremely undisciplined. They had 17 penalties for 130 yards, which seems crazy. And they allowed 450 passing yards. And they even had 15 more minutes of time of possession and still lost. And it's just, that quick, I can't remember the receiver, I think number 11 for Tennessee just caught everything. I think he had 200 yards and like 5 touchdowns. So, I mean, what a difference that one player can make in the game. And Alabama couldn't cover him, and they ended up losing. And there's something extra satisfying about Saban's teams losing. I'd say best way is when we blow them out in the Natty, obviously, but then second best is when they struggle with special teams.
Yes, sweet, sweet, yeah. But yeah, I think Tennessee's pace, like if you watch a Tennessee game, just look at the pace they play with. Like they are getting the ball off so quick. So that's part of the reason their time of possession was, disproportionately low versus
Mm-hmm.
Bama's. They were scoring so quickly, and in some cases they were 3 and out, going 3 and out, and that's when Alabama came back. But that offense, like I think Clemson, I think when I see pace, people that move at that level of pace, like it's almost impossible to defend, especially when you have a good quarterback like they do. And is it Hyatt or Highland? They're great wide receiver.
It's one of those two, I
Yeah.
think. Yeah.
Anyhow, yeah, you're right. It's like Clemson has the weapons. I think any team. I don't know if it's like why Clemson doesn't use more pace, but that's a story for another day. But that's a legit offense, and their defense made some plays too. Credit to Bryce Young on, like, if you watch that guy, like if you thought Deshaun Watson was Houdini, like that guy's on like next level. Like the way he just
Mm-hmm.
evades the guys, the pass rush. It's incredible.
Well, when you look at, before Deshaun faced Saban in 15, I mean, you had guys like AJ McCarron, um, right? He was Bama, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And just some of those other quarterbacks that they had forever was just a under center guy, can throw some passes, wasn't going to necessarily, be, Vince Young or Deshaun or anybody like that. And I think once he saw what a quarterback that can run and throw can do, he, to his credit, completely adapted his game. Went after Jalen Hurts, went after Tua, went after Bryce Young. So, you know, it's nobody's going to say that the Saban era is coming to an end, but it was a real messy game. So we'll
yeah.
see what happens the rest of the season.
Well,
I've got some hot takes later on too.
I'll kind of throw a hot take. Like we had a little, I think it was me and Ben and Tully in 2 episodes ago, and we talked about Clemson not being top five or whatever, not leapfrogging Michigan or Ohio State. And I kind of agree that from what I've seen, I don't know if they're on that level of Bama, Georgia, and maybe even Tennessee, but also Ohio State and Michigan. I'm like, I don't know if they're quite there, but I don't think that Bama's like a juggernaut this year. I don't. Georgia actually might be, but I don't like they've shown some they have some issues. So like I just don't think it's so preposterous to think that Clemson could play with any of those teams, or that at least that their ceiling is right there with any of those teams. I don't know if that's a hot take or just kind of a reasonable take.
Do you think it? No, I think that's more of a reasonable take, and it's definitely a little spicy. Does it interest you that if I were to tell you, without seeing the scores, that Tennessee is going to beat Alabama and Tennessee is going to score as many points against Alabama that Georgia is going to score against Vandy? That was interesting to me. I mean,
Yeah.
it's still 50 something points, but um, it's 50 points against Vandy versus 50 points against Nick Saban.
Right. That's yeah. The defense had some issues.
Yeah.
Even their offense wasn't perfect. And if Bryce Young can't stay healthy, like anyhow, it's not Bama's to lose this year. It's like far from that. And I don't know. I don't see it as like such a high tier of like these guys and we're not there yet. It's like I don't know. I just feel like it's
Mhm.
there is a tier and there's teams behind it, but I think Clemson's they're close. They're knocking on the door of the Bamas and Georgias and Ohio
Yeah.
States this year.
Yeah, we're betting on that, like we do continue to peak and get better and better. But if we are kind of peaking now and we level off, then I say that the team, as we see it, even if it gets a little bit better, is still not going to be probably good enough to win a natty. Maybe compete for one. But if we can continue to tighten up over time, then like that's who we will be in the postseason. So
Yeah.
we just have to wait and see.
Some
Um,
yeah. Some injury
yeah.
luck and who knows, just put together two good games. Like it could be that kind of season where like again, another great team, an all-time team is not going to win this year. It's going to be a flawed team. Why not us?
Yep. Why not us?
So,
I
Jared,
love that.
what's your hot takes? Are we ready for these? Because I'm
Yeah.
eager.
So a couple hot takes that I've got is what's the most chaotic scenario you can think of for the college football playoff? And I will list off a potential one. Uh, Tennessee beats Alabama, which has happened. UGA beats UT, which could happen. They're both in the East. UGA then loses to Bama in the SEC championship game. So you have 3 one-loss SEC teams. Meanwhile, Michigan beats Ohio State, but then loses in their championship game. So then you have 2 one-loss Big Ten teams. And then Clemson say we win the ACC or we have 1 loss and win the ACC. I think because there's not a couple teams that are just absolutely blowing everybody out, is this the year where we just have a roll of the dice shit show of playoff selection day?
Yeah, it's like a figure skating match where it's all subjective.
Yeah.
It could be it very well could be. And from what I've seen, Tennessee's deserving. We'll see how the how everything plays out in terms of, like if it's what's it called, the complete chaos scenario. I'm rooting for chaos. I'll tell you that. I would love to see Bama or Georgia not make it to the playoff just because, they're playing in the mighty SEC. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, you heard it here first. We are Team Chaos on the podcast. And yes, it would be great to see Bama or Georgia have to sit at home. Another hot take is Cade going to transfer? Because he hasn't seen the field, but he's seen the field for a dozen snaps, it feels like.
He's not
And
going
you're a
to try.
5-star guy.
He's a high character kid. He loves Clemson.
Mhm.
If DJ comes back, I think he has a decision to make. I don't think DJ's coming. I think the hot take is DJ's probably not coming back.
Interesting. Because if DJ does come back, you also have Chris Vizina, a freshman 5-star, coming in. And yeah, then what happens?
Then Cade's going into year 3, knowing that
Mhm.
he's going up
Or
against
year 2.
or like, well, assuming like, DJ goes 3 or 4 with Clemson. So then you're a third year Klubnik
Mhm.
and a second year
Mhm.
Benzino. I think Klubnik might need to search for greener. That's one of those things where I don't fault a quarterback. There's only one quarterback
Mhm.
position. So I think maybe he leaves then. But I don't think DJ's coming back.
Yeah, I think so. And even at the beginning of the season, Dabo made a point to say that DJ is planning to graduate in December and all that type of stuff. That may have been to kind of calm the media people asking for his head after last year, but I guess we'll have to see. We always tried to support DJ and so proud of him for the season that he's turned this into. So look, we've got hot takes. Like Ben and Tully are not here to be the parents and the adults in the room. So here's what I want to know. What's more likely? Tennessee makes the SEC championship game or Clemson loses a game?
Tennessee makes.
Makes the SEC championship game. So is that more likely
So
than us losing a game? I guess maybe how likely do you think it is that we lose a game,
versus
of
Georgia
the regular
being,
season?
I think it's much more likely that Tennessee makes they have to go to Athens. I don't think they're going to win that.
Uh-huh.
Let me say it back to you. I think it's more likely. Oh man, I don't know. What do you think? Maybe it's more likely that Tennessee. I don't know.
I think it's more likely that Tennessee makes a championship game because when I look at Syracuse, I look at Notre Dame, Louisville, and Miami. I don't know that I for sure am like, shit, we're gonna lose this game. Not that I would ever be that way, even against Georgia to open up last year. Um, but I think that's us losing is probably less likely, which sounds it's kind of hard to follow at home. Yeah. So
Yeah, I think
yeah,
I think us losing is less likely. Yes, I feel pretty good. Our biggest test is Syracuse, and I think it's well, the next 2 weeks will be test, but then
mhm.
it's downhill.
I love that. So who do you blame for the defensive line inconsistencies? Do you blame more of Eason or Goodwin? And why is the real answer Dabo Sweeney?
It's all Dabo's fault. So what are the defensive line inconsistencies? Is it pass rush or the allowing more of the run game? What's the primary gripe?
I would say it's easy to be like recency bias towards saying the run game. But if you take that out, we've crushed in the run game. I think some of the defensive line inconsistencies have been maybe not playing with as much intensity. We'll just leave it at that.
Who is that on? Stabo. No, I think is that like I don't know in the interwebs and the social media sphere, is that what's being said? Are these things being said about Clemson on the internet? I don't.
I don't know. I don't have
Yeah,
social media right now.
yeah, you put it away. That's a good call. Good decision to do that. I don't know. I think all that's overblown. I think the defensive line is. I think I said they need to be 80% of what the Power Rangers were in order for this to be
Mhm,
a championship team. They're not 80% of what the Power Rangers were, but
mhm.
I think they're about 65%. I think they could get to 80%. I think they've been
Yeah,
good. I think they've been good. KJ's been good. I'm not gonna. I think there's another gear with good help, but I'm not gonna fault anyone on the defensive line.
sure. And just a reminder, these are hot takes. These are shit takes. Cody does not have any prior knowledge of this. We are just, swinging at this for good time's sake. I guess the last one that I have here is out of Brzee, Murphy, and Davis, who stays and who goes?
Z Murphy, David. Well, Davis. Well, technically he has another year, but he's gone. It's his fourth year. He's gone.
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm,
for C and Murphy, you could make the argument for either one to come back for
mhm,
different reasons. I think Brzez's put enough on film. He's probably going to be a first rounder, even though you take it. He's had a bad year this year. Not a bad year. It's just because of his
mhm,
injury coming off the ACL. He hasn't been peak Brzee. So
mhm.
I think he would still be a top probably 10 pick given just his ceiling and what he's put on film. Murphy was the one that I hadn't put enough on film, I thought. Although that's changed in the last few weeks. But I thought
Mhm.
there was a chance he could fall maybe to second round and have an incentive to come back to get that first round money. So I still think it's Murphy. But that could
Yeah,
change. That could change if Brzee just kind of stays stale and doesn't hit that second level. It could be that his stock falls by the end of the year while Murphy's ascends. What do you think?
I think that Brzee, because he's had such a weird year and missed a bunch of time of practice, and just before even the family stuff, he was recovering from a torn ACL and getting that confidence back. So I think with that, the weird year, I think he's going to want to come back just to prove a point. If unless he just absolutely goes ham these last couple of games and in the playoffs, hopefully. Murphy, I think he could be. He's probably like 60% would probably leave, but I think that he also knows that he's been kind of playing soft some games, and really, yeah, I would say Brzee
Yeah.
comes back, Murphy 50-50, and Davis leaves.
Yeah. Well, and my point just being too that Brzee, I've seen him be a dominant player. I haven't seen
Hmm.
Murphy has not been a dominant player until the last few weeks, but he needs to,
Sure.
yeah. So I'm with you. I say it's higher
Mhm.
than 60 for Murphy though to go to the league. I think it's probably like 80 right now.
Mm. Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. Um, Anything you want to say about other games from last week, games coming up this week? We might not touch on much of the Syracuse preview so much as we have, we're kind of running the show this time. So if the podcast, like I heard Tully say, we make no promises about anything. So we're kind of following our own format here. What are your thoughts? Anything you want to add in? You want to take a jab? I'll take a jab at South Carolina because I'm really proud that they did not lose this week playing their bye week. So congrats on not taking it out.
Anything else about South Carolina?
Uh, I mean, I still think that they should have named their chicken something a little more salacious, but you know, I guess they'll have to go with. Did they actually go with Cock Commander?
I have no idea.
Oh my god! Yeah, I think I in the one of the ones I suggested private penis, something like that. So there's still time.
Yeah. I didn't watch any other games. I watched the Alabama game because I was watching the Braves playoff. So I was really dialed into that, and I watched the Alabama Tennessee game, and that was it. So I know nothing else. I saw
Hmm.
Kansas lost, so their runs
Hmm.
over. I saw
Yeah.
uh, Oklahoma won, so their new streak begins. But so I know nothing else, and I haven't listened to any college football podcasts this week. So
Yeah, Miami beat Virginia Tech in the Who Cares Bowl 20-14. Hey, Old Miss is still undefeated. Can the lane train be stopped?
so that's interesting because if I would Alabama's been faltering, Oklahoma could or Oklahoma, Old Miss could
Old
come
Miss.
in and yeah,
Yeah.
that I would love it. And then ultimate chaos, they come in beat let's say Georgia,
Yeah. You see Old Miss and Lane Kiffin competing in the playoff.
one loss all around. Yeah,
That would be
it'd be interesting.
pretty wild. I
Yeah,
think coming up this week, we're losing it, people. It's getting late here. The biggest game is probably UCLA versus Oregon, number 9 versus number 10. I realized today the Pac-12 has no divisions, so they got rid
yeah,
of their divisions this year, and
yeah,
what ACC is going to do. So that'll be an interesting game. Could have implications to a playoff team depending on what shakes out higher up the rankings. Um, Other than that, not anything super jumps out that I'm dying to see. Maybe Iowa randomly beats Ohio State like they did a couple of years ago, but I doubt it.
yeah. It's funny like the dichotomy between the Big Ten. I think it's boring football for the most part,
Hmm.
especially when you're talking about
Yeah.
Iowa and well, Ohio
Yeah.
State is fine. Ohio State's fine, but even Michigan's a bit boring. But yeah, it's just
Yeah.
generally it's ground and pound, boring football. But then Pac-12, like Oregon
Hmm.
and UCLA, say what you want about them, when they play Georgia and they get embarrassed, fair enough. But like watching those, like they're very entertaining teams to watch. So like that's definitely something
Yeah.
I'll be tuning into. UCLA's, I think they're good
Yeah. We
too.
could do a whole,
Yeah,
yeah, for sure. I could see an entire hour or more of just rambling about what college football would look like if there were no like SEC type teams, and it was like most people were at like ACC Pac-12 level, like would just be chaos of like who's really the highest in the pecking order, where you don't have somebody like Saban and Alabama just coming and just like sledgehammering whatever team goes against them in the first round of the playoffs. So
right.
totally a subject that's off the rails here at this point. Before we get out of here, any thoughts you want to say about Syracuse? Q's is 6-0, Clemson 7-0. Like I said, I think it'll be the first time two teams at least 6-0 have come into Death Valley. Syracuse believes.
Yeah, they're hot. I think Clemson has the upper hand because we're at home. I think it's actually good that they're ranked and that they've had so much success because I think when Clemson when Syracuse is a threat to Clemson is when Clemson lets their guard down, but they're not going to be letting their guard down. They know that Babers is a good coach. Their quarterback's a good quarterback. They have a great running back. I can't recall his name. So I think it's actually good that they're coming
Sean
in
Tucker.
ranked with this hype, knowing that they're undefeated, because you've seen it. We talked about it. Inconsistencies along the defensive line and other places. I think it allows Clemson to get up for this.
Mm-hmm. Totally agree. I looked at some of the stats. They're getting all 5 starters back on the O-line, and they have a left guard that's 375 pounds. So I don't know. Yeah. Okay. Thanks. I just want to let it be known that that big is beautiful.
You hear that, Dietrich?
Yeah.
If you're listening, big is beautiful.
Yep. I've been cheering for you all season, my man. Get out on the field and pancake somebody. Q's only other away game all year was at UConn. So I think as long as we're more rowdy than UConn, they might have a tougher time in Death Valley.
I think we can achieve that. I think we can handle it. And it's a long flight for these Northerners. They're coming into the deep South, and I don't know. I feel good about it, but I think it ends up being our best game, our best team that will play for the rest of the way. I didn't mean for that to rhyme.
Ooh, I like that. We'll take it at this point. So that's all I got. Overall, I'm not super scared of Q's. Neither is Vegas, minus 13.5. Want to see us play a more complete game. I'm obviously not an expert. I'm obviously a bit of a homer. So when I say I'm not really scared of them, that could mean that's worth nothing. So would be interested. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can also comment down below and let us know what you think.
Yeah. And also comment, like, what was it that compelled you to listen to this whole podcast? That would be, I'm just kidding.
Yes.
But
if you're somewhere at home and this was shuffled on and you're stuck, maybe you're bedridden and you can't get out, I just want to give a shout out to you thank you for listening. And even though you couldn't change, you didn't change, like most of us.
Right on.
Yeah. Anything before we wrap it up and get out of here, Cody, and leave these people alone?
No, just plug in the YouTube channel. Like, I know the algorithms takes a while, but yeah, if you do watch YouTube and you'd rather see our faces, I get it. Can't do 2 things at once, but yeah, just like and subscribe because that helps the algorithms, and we can get in front of other people and hopefully grow our following.
Absolutely. And if you also want to listen to the audio version of this and you're still listening on the podcast version, you can find us anywhere that you get your podcast from, whatever service that may be. I think that's about it. So if nothing else, I think we'll just say go Tigers.